Go
Right.
ahead. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Zaretsky. Very nice to meet you. What a lovely view of Tashkent we're having.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good. Thank you very much. And you can call me Daniel. You don't have
Okay.
to call me Mr. Zaretsky. Don't worry.
All
Thank
right.
you, Yeldon. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Daniel. Let's start with the big topic. And
Sure.
I know that you've had experience with the USAID in Central Asia. Um,
Right.
could you tell us about the effects of the, cut in US aid projects and funding? How does that
Right.
I don't want to ask you why it happened, but
Right.
what
Right. Right.
what are the effects of
Right.
it?
Well, it's actually interesting because let's just say right here in Uzbekistan where I am now. I mean, I've been based here 2 years. There was constant events by USAID contractors here,
Hmm.
constant different events, startup competition, this, that, the other, whatnot. And it just in 1 second, it completely nothing is happening in that realm.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things is that you know, some other countries may also be taking cues from this and also cutting their aid budgets as well. So
Hmm.
it may not just be the US here as well. I think another thing to tell you is that, uh, I think there are people looking for jobs because there are here foreigners and locals. Why? Because, first of all, you have a USAID sort of bureaucratic apparatus. And you have, US people who work for USAID, Americans at the embassy, and all this kind of a thing who probably planned their whole career to be in USAID, and then
Yeah.
midway through their career, boom. So they've had to go back, a lot of them already to the US. You have locals who work in the administrative apparatus who are also looking for jobs. And
Hmm.
then you have support because I think that a good number of organizations throughout the region got a good amount of support from USAID.
Hmm.
And if they can't be supported there, then they also have to find jobs. And then you also have an interesting thing. You have the USAID contractors. There's a
Hmm.
bunch of them that mainly win all the contracts and all that,
Hmm.
and they've completely disappeared. They
Hmm.
were, as I say, they were the ones running a lot of these events I mentioned. This one is doing this one is doing that, this one's part of this, and now all of a sudden, I haven't seen their faces all year. So I wonder if they've also returned to the US. And I think it's kind of interesting, though, because the organization that I was working with was more funded through the State Department and not through USAID. And there actually, from what I've noticed over the years, a rivalry between the two, between
Hmm.
the USAID and the state, actually,
Hmm.
and so on. And now it's interesting because USAID is being put under the Rubio, under kind of State Department before it's kind of dismantled.
Hmm.
And to be frank, I think actually that there is a need. There is a need to look at the whole aid apparatus, the whole what is it doing, what is it for, who is it funding, is it effective, is it achieving what it's supposed to be doing, or is it just uh, amplifying existing problems and pathologies, you understand, and making them worse.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think it definitely is needed. I think the issue is that probably it needs to be done in a more gradual and how should you say uh, researched way. A more way with to see it this and maybe not just sudden cuts and so on.
Hmm.
But I know that in the American press, there's a lot of this issue of, well, soft power, that, US, a lot of its power is based on soft power, as you said, American culture and this and that and the other. And now we're losing to our so-called competitors, who we all know who they are. right? To the north of Uzbekistan, to the east of Uzbekistan, right? Uh, so I'm also curious though, because I think there's a mixed appreciation of U.S. aid. I don't mean U.S. aid itself, aid in general from the
Hmm.
U.S., not just from U.S. aid, because on the one hand, well, maybe it's funding this and that. On the
Hmm.
other hand, are there other motives? You understand, and other things that are being put in there as well.
Hmm.
So I think that's a debate that's happening in the U.S. But I will say, I think I don't know. I think I don't want to say the U.S. is exhausted, but I think that you know the extension of the U.S. power through the world between all these hundreds of military bases and all of this kind of things and so on. Maybe it was just the capacity is not there from the US side or the will from the population anymore. For example, the population, from what I can see, in general, is not supporting sending US troops anymore. It's not supporting. So I don't think right now you'd see in Afghanistan and Iraq or Libya or that. Now, of course, you may see things like Ukraine where troops aren't sent, but money is sent and all that. But I think even in general, except for a few cases, that is also the population is also kind of with that as well.
Yes,
So far, it's too difficult to tell because it's just such a short time that it's happened. But I've definitely seen, the activity seemed to have ceased. There was constant activity, and it seems to have just ceased like that. So we'll see. We'll see. I think, we'll see if this affects soft power in any way. Maybe in some ways it affects soft power positively because of what I said about, what are the motives, as it is with any organization that comes to help. So, but just I don't want to keep going on this, but one more thing. I think, and I'm not privy to any of this, that, they're looking at the aid model where it's less of the traditional aid and more of, as they say, trade, not aid, an investment. So from
right.
what I can see, something like the DFC, the Development Finance Corporation, may be getting more um, power to do some of that stuff here. But to be frank, so far, and we can talk about this later because it's one of my pet issues. It's changing a little bit, but I don't see much evidence of activity from the U.S. Multilateral or the DFC or any of this stuff in this region.
Hmm.
So that's something we can talk about further in
That,
my
that's ac- that,
experience.
that's actually what I wanted to bring our conversation
Yeah,
to. There's a lot of talk about tariff wars and
right,
hindrances to international trade and collapse of the neoliberal economic
right, right, right,
system.
right,
But
right,
but there are also reports coming out about preferential treatment to specific things like rare minerals and
right.
resources.
Yes,
So I was wondering, how does that affect the view of Central Asia in general through the eyes of a U.S. investor? Because I understand that it's the businesses that will have to be picking up all the
yes,
support
yes,
that USAID used to provide. Now
right,
would be, as you said, more of a trade, not
right,
aid type of a
right.
deal. So, what do you
Well, so
that?
yeah, go ahead.
No, no, I
Oh,
just wanted.
okay. Oh, okay. I actually was working on a program here to help exporters from here to export to the US market in
Mhm.
different areas. And of course, that's out now for the time being, because
Mhm.
even frankly, even if they cut the tariffs a bit, it's uncertainty, and the market hates uncertainty. We don't know today this, tomorrow that. What we need is certainty. I'd almost
Right.
rather know something is a bad policy, but there's certainty that it's staying, than have a good policy today, but you don't know tomorrow it can be, because then
Right.
stay away right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So let's be frank, the trade here is between US. and the investment in Central Asia is not tremendous by any stretch. And most of it is, of course, Kazakhstan, which makes sense. Kazakhstan opened up much earlier, and the oil and gas and all the other stuff and the supporting services, the consultancies, the accounting, the legal, the this, the hotels, they all moved in at that point.
Hmm.
Now, what I've been critical of is that, the US, uh, how shall I say this? They come out with a new policy, somebody, the state or somebody, the state, but every 5 or 10 years about Central Asia or this region, something, something, and then nothing happens. Okay, some new strategy. So nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. Now, I think to expect the US to invest or trade the same amount as China or Russia here is not going to happen. First of all, China's been involved with this region for 2,000 years on and off. It's bordering some of the countries, okay, and so on. So it's very easy, that connection. Russia, of course, has had intensive involvement now for what, 160 years off and on, right? And even with Kazakhstan before that, I mean, you're going back even further. So, uh, and as you know, in the Soviet time, the trade was oriented with Russia, the pipelines, I think the railroads and
Yep.
everything and all this, which is changing a bit now. You know, many people studied in Russia, many period came up in the Soviet period and all this. As you know, the Russian language is still heavily used. And many people are working in Russia from these countries, etc. So the ties are still very strong, and the U.S. is very, very far,
Sorry, Daniel, I lost you there.
very far away.
Yeah, the US is very far away. Okay.
Okay, and to be frank, the average or uh,
Sorry, Daniel.
so should I just continue?
Yeah, yeah, just
Okay, I'm trying to think what I was talking. Right. So, some people still associate with Russia. Oh, is the war hitting you here? I mean, as if we're right where the war thing is happening. Or if you
yeah,
say Asia, well, then they think Japan or Vietnam or something.
yeah.
So I think there's a general lack among the population. But what is the change? What is the change that you mentioned and we've seen? First of all, the critical raw materials. Okay,
Mhm.
so we know that EU and US have both signed agreements with Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, both in the last year or so, about this issue.
Mhm.
And I went to an event last year about repealing the Jackson-Vanik agreement, which I don't know if you want to. That was put in the 70s
Yep,
because the Soviets weren't allowing the Jews out of the Soviet Union.
yep,
And the point is that it still exists because these states are considered the successor states of the Soviet Union.
yep,
And it should be an easy thing to repeal because, people who want to leave now can just leave. But you have to understand the workings of the American government. It's not one, two, three. It's a bureaucracy. And to get the people who are, the stakeholders involved to get and to pay and all that, it takes a heck of a lot of effort. You
yep,
understand what I mean?
of course.
So I think though that there may be some push now to get rid of that so that they'll but of course now we have the tariffs and the trade situation, so who really knows what's going to happen. But what I was very happy to see was that in Rubio's confirmation hearings to be Secretary of State, they specifically asked about Central Asia. Okay. And then you may or may not have seen, but um, the Uzbekistan foreign minister was recently in Washington. The
Hmm.
head of the National Security Council, I'm not sure exactly what it's called here, was also there,
Yep.
and they had very high level meetings, and so on. And there's more push about those critical raw materials and minerals. And there's rumors, and there's been rumors that the president of the US may make a visit to Central Asia uh, in the future, um, which has, of course, never happened. I know vice presidents have visited. Gore visited. I know Clinton visited.
Yeah.
Yes. So it seems like there's a bunch of different sort of think tanks, and others are recently publishing like US strategies for Central Asia or US strategies for Caucasus and Central Asia. There's more talk about the middle corridor and so on. But I don't wanna, how should I say? So I'm pleased about that, but I don't want to overemphasize it. I think sometimes there's still this misnomer that, the US is all powerful and can just go anywhere and do this. That's A. B. B. There's this misnomer that, well, the US government can just tell US companies to go and invest in this and all this kind of a thing. I mean, now if it's a big thing like, say, oil and gas, I'm sure they work together. You understand, with the US government, Mobil or whoever. But if it's small guys like me or businessmen or entrepreneurs, I mean, they can't tell me to come to this. You understand what I mean in all this? So half of the thing is, especially with the distance and the landlockedness, it has to be made attractive to the investors. It has to be made and so on. So I'm not, even if there is stuff in critical raw materials, which I expect there will be, uh, and it'll be, that'll bring in related, how should I say, related businesses that service them, like consultants and legal and accounting and this and secondary things like, hotels and all this that. It's not like we're going to see, 10,000 American businesses just come here tomorrow and invest and so
Right.
on. But I actually, I mean, we can talk about this separately. I don't know if you saw the video I sent regarding the one I did for the Global Chamber recently about opportunities in Uzbekistan. But I say that, if I were a person looking at new markets and new regions, this is one of those places to be because of I mean, Uzbekistan and Central Asia in general, because of the demographics, because of the fact that they just recently opened up to the world. So a lot of things that the rest of the world did years ago have not been done here, but if you wait 10 years, they'll be done. So you have a chance to come in here and be a first or second mover in many things, many areas that the rest of the world is long saturated with. And, the fact that we have very good relations now between the Central Asian countries, which didn't exist previously, means that, things are moving forward on that. And, you can come to Tashkent or Almaty and make your base for Central Asia, whether it's in manufacturing, service, consulting, anything, retail services, and service this whole region. Which, besides which, the borders are very close: Almaty, Bishkek, Chimkent, Tashkent, Khojan, and so on. So uh, I'm quite bullish on that, on what I can see. But again, one more thing, and I've heard it said from the American government: we're not telling these countries not to work with Russia and China. That's unrealistic. These, because of the reasons I mentioned. But I think, for example, Kazakhstan too, Uzbekistan been quite smart, quite neutral. They're trying to have good relations with everybody. And believe you me, there are so many, but we had meeting yesterday. There are so many potential projects here that there's room for everybody. And one country alone can't have the capacity for that. Now, of course, China is the main investor here in many projects, and we also find the Gulf region.
Mhm.
Gulf region, especially in the renewable energies here, it seems like
Mhm.
every day there's a new deal for solar, this, wind, that, or the other. So let's not expect that level here, but from the US. But I think there will be some more movement. As I said, I'm hopeful personally.